Hello. I was hoping you could tell me a little bit more about what an educational psychologist does, or an EP as you're better known, within the Anchor team.
Of course. Educational psychology is concerned with children and young people in educational and early years settings. EPs are often asked to tackle challenges such as learning difficulties, social and emotional concerns, issues around disability, as well as more complex developmental disorders. Some of the main aims of educational psychology are to promote learning, develop emotional, social and behavioural skills, and support psychological development. EPs work in a variety of ways, including observations, interviews and assessments, and offering consultation, advice and support to teachers, parents, the wider network, as well as the young person themselves. Educational psychologists are also often involved in providing training for teachers, learning support assistants, and others working with children. So hopefully that's given a bit of an idea about educational psychology. What about occupational therapy?
Well, occupational therapists are concerned with a person's engagement and participation in the occupations, or sometimes it's easy to think of them as activities that they need to, want to, or have to do on a daily basis. For a child, this may include playing, learning, and developing independence in everyday tasks. As an OT, we are dual trained in both physical and mental health, so you can find us working in lots of different settings, from accident emergency departments to community mental health services, which is why what we do can sometimes seem confusing or different depending on where we work and in what context you meet us. For children, typically we focus on three areas. The first area is self-care, which can include difficulties with toileting, dressing, washing, etc. The second area is education, for example, academic tasks like handwriting and the ability to participate in physical education. Last but not least, we think about community participation, for example, engagement in extracurricular activities or ability to participate in family gatherings.
Thank you for explaining that.
I was hoping you could tell me a little bit more about how you see your role fitting into the Anchor team.
Within the Anchor team, we are trying to bring a more specialist lens that draws on an understanding of adoption and special guardianship, specifically the role of early attachment and developmental trauma. Where our colleagues in the Anchor team have identified some additional support needs within an educational context for a family that we are supporting, I might also be able to offer support to the family, the educational setting, and the wider professional network. Drawing on a knowledge of educational systems and policies, and an understanding of child development, including a specific focus on the experience of adoption and special guardianship, I hope to help promote a positive experience in education and identify ways of moving forward when things are feeling quite difficult or stuck. So, what about the OT role? How does this work within the Anchor team?
Well, there can be many different factors that might create a barrier to a child being able to engage in everyday occupations. As an OT, we look at the child, the occupation, and the environment, all of which might be having an impact. This can include thinking about their motor skills, motivation, emotional regulation, and sensory processing challenges. In Anchor, I'll be looking to work with parents, schools, and other professionals in order to think collaboratively about how best to offer support. I'll be thinking about ways in which we can modify or adapt the environment or task in order to promote the child's engagement and participation in occupations that are meaningful to them. This means sometimes having to be very creative about the ways we work on skill development and promote independence. So, we've heard about Ricky earlier and some of the difficulties he's having in school. For this type of situation, how might you be able to help?
Well, EP involvement will likely look slightly different for every family and school we work with, but I do have a few ideas of what this might look like for Ricky. This might include observing Ricky in class, during transition, and during unstructured playtimes to help build a better understanding of his current experience at school. Then, through offering consultation to parents and school staff, including both support assistants and senior leadership over time, we would hope to develop a clearer picture of his current needs in school. In this space, we would hope to make sense of what is going on and think about what we might do to help the environment feel safer for Ricky, how staff respond and interact with him, particularly in challenging moments. and also to consider what additional support he might need to feel he belongs and to strengthen his social relationships. Joining key meetings in education might also help provide a psychologically informed perspective in relation to the influence of early attachment and developmental trauma needs to support the wider professional network. This might also include providing some support and guidance to school staff working with Ricky. Ultimately, this process is likely to lead towards some collaborative action planning with parents and school staff, and also any other professionals involved in supporting Ricky. This plan would be intended to guide future support for Ricky at school, potentially including the provision of additional training for staff where needed, and/or support implementing strategies and interventions. Approaches will likely include some adaptations to the environment and support approaches based on our deepened understanding, in addition to supporting the development of new skills for Ricky. Ricky is someone that we would both probably be looking to support. Can you tell me about how you might be involved?
I think that being left in a cot for long periods of time and not having had the same opportunities to explore and interact with his environment has meant that Ricky's sense of body awareness may have been affected by his early developmental experiences. Getting dressed, brushing his teeth, and all the demands of the different self-care tasks needed before school might be really tricky for Ricky, and it could be the cause of his emotional outbursts. In school, because he's struggling to know where his body is in space, it could be impacting on his ability to navigate around his peers and objects like desks. He also may struggle to know how much pressure and force he needs to use during writing tasks or other activities like playing football. I think I'd like to meet his parents or carers and speak to schools so that I can get more information on understanding Ricky's sensory processing challenges and have a think about what would be most useful to implement at home and in school to support Ricky. I might also need to collaborate with other key agencies in the region and possibly advocate for additional support if needed. We've explored how we both might be involved in a case like Ricky's, but I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about your role in Anchor generally.
In addition to what we have just talked about, I will also be able to offer separate consultations to key professionals and families where appropriate. I believe consultation can provide a reflective space to explore new ideas, assist in problem solving and sense making, identify barriers to learning and broader success at school, and to collaboratively generate plans for moving forward. I hope to be working closely with key agencies across Berkshire and Swindon, including virtual schools and educational psychology services. I will be offering specialised training covering a range of areas in relation to adoption and special guardianship families with a specific education focus. I hope to build strong relationships with the professionals across the region, to learn from them and to think strategically about how to enhance the educational experience of children and young people who have been adopted or under special guardianship across the region. So, now you've heard about my role, what about you? What else will you be doing as part of your work with Anchor?
Well, as I said in Ricky's case, I think parental sessions around sensory processing difficulties and their impact on everyday activities is going to be an important part of my role. This will include problem solving where the task or the environment might be impacting on a child's participation and thinking about what strategies we can put in place to help. There are many different types of programs that can be collaboratively designed with parents and schools to help develop skills for self-regulation and independence. I think it will be really important that this is something that is going to be possible and practical for parents, carers or schools to carry out, and that the child or young person is motivated to engage and participate in the process. Similarly to your role, I'm hoping to build strong relationships with professionals across the region to learn from them and think strategically about how to enhance the occupational engagement and participation of children and young people who've been adopted or under special guardianship. This could also involve offering training and consultation to professionals to think about typical sensory motor development and how this may have been affected by early childhood experiences, alongside looking at the different types of strategies and tools that can be used to help support the child or young person's ability to function in daily life.
Hopefully that feels like a good start to making sense of both the EP and OT roles at Anchor.
Here are just some of the areas we might be involved in.